Alright, what's up everybody? Sorry this video was a little bit delayed. I went on a little trip to Colorado, but I'm back now and I'm going to record this video for you guys about how I studied for boards and how a lot of my friends studied for boards, and what we did was really successful for us, and we both, or a lot of us, agreed that this was a really good way to approach both second year at DMU and prepare yourself for boards. Just a little heads up, everything I'm going to talk about in this presentation is largely based off of Anki, using the Anking deck. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So something I like to point out in Anki, with the Anking deck, you have to download this, or you can download all the add-ons and whatever you want, but as long as you have the ability to see these tags on the side here, you'll be just fine. So it has everything like Boards and Beyond and Amboss, First Aid, and these are all just tags that represent the material from those resources. So this is super useful to have. And something I always like to point out to people before they get started is you can click on this AK Step 1 V11 here, or whatever version you're on. Yours might be V12. And you'll see this tab that says Flag These Cards. And then this one here that says Delete. And mine says 1165, but yours will say like 3600 or something like that. You can highlight all of these cards and delete every single one of these cards. These are all like repeat information or outdated information, but for the most part they're just like duplicate cards and stuff like that. I had already unlocked over 1100 cards before I figured this out, so I deleted everything else and kept the ones I already had in rotation. But otherwise, you can cut down on the amount you need to do and delete all these cards if you'd like. A little bit more background about my Anking. Let me open my stats here. I got through, oh, just kidding, it's not going to show. Okay, never mind. I got through like 75% of the deck, I think, roughly something like that. Here we go. Nope, that's the entire deck. So that included Step 1 and Step 2. This should work. There it is. Okay, so I got, I got 76% of the way through the entire deck of, it's about 30,000 cards, so I did, let's see, about just over 27,000 cards. And that was more than enough for me to be ready for passing both COMLEX and Step 1. So you really don't have to complete the entire Anking deck to be ready for these exams. It's just one of those things, like the more you do, the more prepared you're going to be. So now I'd like to talk about this DMU to Boards deck or Google Doc that I helped develop last year. So it's separated by blocks and exams and semesters. And first thing to point out is don't be surprised if you come in here and the lectures are out of order for you guys relative to what ours are or were. This is how we had everything presented, and I had to go in and rearrange a lot of lectures compared to the class that passed this down before me. So just don't be surprised if you have to rearrange them a little bit. That's totally fine. Anything you see here like this that's bolded and has like watch capitalized is something that I added. And a really good way to follow this is to do everything that's like, these are the most high yield videos to watch associated with the lectures that you're watching in class. So basically what I would do is watch a lecture, go find a video like on Boards and Beyond or Pathoma or Sketchy, watch that video, unlock the associated deck, do that deck, then go back into the lecture and make myself 10, 15, 20 flashcards over what I thought was high yield information from the lectures themselves that was not covered in these board resources. So to do that with these, you just get in here, copy that link, go over to your browser and paste that up here, press enter, and these are all the cards you need to unlock that I found boards related cards related to that lecture. So it's a super useful way to study for boards and school at the same time. Sometimes you'll see that there's not, I didn't link a video with it, or I either didn't find one or didn't have time, but like if you see something like this, that means there is a video, but maybe I just didn't watch it because I didn't think it was necessary. And you'll run into several things where, like these, for example, don't have anything board related that I could find video-wise, at least. So those are just going to have to use a pre-made deck or make your own cards to prepare for like the DMU material that you're going to see. And then if you scroll all the way down on this deck, I would It's not super important, but it can get, I added all these tags, so it'll be easier to follow. But before, I would like copy everything and move it to the bottom of the page where my dog Ellie would guard them and protect them. So this is Ellie. She's going to give you good luck, and you're going to do just fine on all of your exams and all of your boards. Okay, so now I'd like to talk about UWorld, Pathoma, and Sketchy Micro. These are the three resources that both myself and a ton of other students that I studied with or alongside used, and Boards and Beyond as well. So UWorld is really just your best resource for practice questions. I get a lot of questions about like how much UWorld should I do, when should I start UWorld, and there's no really like perfect answer for that. It's really whenever you want to get started. For me, I'm more of a person that would want to save that resource towards closer to my board's exam, because it's like the most high yield resource you can use is UWorld. So I didn't start doing it until like 3 months out from my exam. I don't know if I necessarily regret that, because it all worked out and I did well, but I only got like 45% of the way through the deck, or through the UWorld questions or something like that. So if you're someone that wants to complete the entire deck, go through it twice or go through your wrongs again, then just keep that in mind and start it earlier. Something I'd really recommend with UWorld, you can start doing as many questions as you want. You can have them timed or untimed, or just get used to the format. But when you start to get closer towards your boards, you're going to want to be doing 40 question blocks that are timed, just to really get yourself used to staying on pace and understanding what it's going to be like for boards. And something else cool about UWorld, so I just screenshot this example from a UWorld question that I had. If you look up here, you'll see the question ID, so 14745. And you can go in here and under UWorld, the UWorld tab here, so they have self-assessments, and then they'll have all of these numbers here. It's like 1000, and you can find the number in here, or you can just type in 14745, enter, and this is the tag that will have any questions, any on-king questions that were tagged as related to this UWorld question. So that's a super useful way to quickly review all of your UWorld, make sure you understand the question, and make sure you have all the cards associated with that question unlocked. Because it'll get to a point where you don't really have time to go through every single thing on UWorld and read every single option and understand everything to the extent that UWorld wants you to know. So sometimes it's best to just unlock the on-king cards and move on to the next one. And another little thing I'd like to mention is this is exactly what step 1 looks like. It looks exactly like this UWorld format, where you'll be able to click lab values, and I can't remember if it's set up the same way, but all of your lab values are given to you on step 1 in this format. For COMLEX, the lab values, the normal lab values, are given to you, but it'll be like patient's TSH, whatever hormone or something level is this, and then in parentheses next to it, it'll give you the normal. So instead of having an actual other tab to click on, like step 1, COMLEX will just tell you the patients and then the normal right afterwards. The next resource I'd like to talk about is Pathoma, and if there's like any resource that I can really emphasize that you guys need other than UWorld is Pathoma. They're just such concise and high yield and well-made videos that are really going to help you guys score some points on step 1 and COMLEX. So this is my information from my step 1 exam. And what this is saying is how many questions I got per discipline when I was taking my exam. And everyone's is going to look pretty similar. And if you look down here in the discipline of pathology, nearly 50% of my questions were related to pathology. So the point being, you really need to know your pathology to do well on this exam. And Pathoma is the best way to learn that. I didn't use Sketchy Path or Osmosis or Board. If there was a video on Pathoma, I used that only, and I didn't use any other resource just because it's so good. Otherwise, you can see physiology is pretty high yield, biochem's pretty high yield, pharmacology is high yield. So if you're really trying to narrow yourself down when you get closer to boards, focus on these big ones. That's what you're going to get the most questions on. As far as micro goes, Sketchy Micro and pharmacology were both really good. I liked them a lot, and Sketchy Farm was a little bit different to get used to. I don't think it's as good as Sketchy Micro, but it's definitely still super helpful. So when you get into your dedicated period, oh, actually, I want to cut back and talk about something else. There's one other resource that is free and is incredibly high yield, and everyone I talked to that used this loved it so much. So it's just this free thing on YouTube called Dirty Medicine. You can type in Dirty Medicine biochemistry, statistics, or OMM. And that's what I used Dirty Medicine playlists for, were those 3 topics. This playlist right here is the only thing I used to review biochemistry before I took my step. I didn't use, maybe sometimes I would look at step 1 just to like see another way that they were talking about the same thing, but I watched all of these videos, took the notes, and then unlocked cards that were like high yield information mentioned in these videos. So for example, you can go to this playlist and there's verse videos on glycolysis. So I'd go through, and they're all super short, like less than 20 minutes for the most part. So I'd go through, watch this video, take notes, and then I would go into OnKing deck here. Go to I would always use Boards and Beyond, and then Biochem, and then wherever it would be, probably in metabolism, and then I would go through glycolysis, and I would physically like click on these and go through all of them and see what was in here that was mentioned in those videos, and then I would unlock those cards so that you can see there's a bunch of them I didn't even unlock. And I would go through, take notes. These are like notes from the Dirty Medicine video that I would screenshot and put them in here. So I just can't emphasize enough how high yield and great these videos are. I used his playlists for all of my biochem, all of my stats, and all of my OMM review in order to prepare for STEP and COMLEX. Super useful, and it's just, he makes really good videos, has great mnemonics and everything. So I mentioned UWorld 4 questions, and that's really going to be the best resource for overall questions to prepare you for STEP and COMLEX. However, for OMM questions, TrueLearn is actually a really good resource. That's basically all I used for OMM questions was TrueLearn. So now I'd just like to talk about how everything worked for me. I took both STEP and COMLEX super early in dedicated, just because I wanted to have the summer off. And if you follow this and keep up with this, then you would likely be ready to do the same thing. When I was in my dedicated period, I was doing practice exams, 1 practice exam every week, and then I sort of ramped them up to 2 a week when I got closer to my exam. So as I mentioned earlier, there's the UWorld self-assessments, which are basically just full-length practice exams, and they have flashcards on those in here. But they were I think they're half-length practice exams. But anyway, the UWorld questions are really good. UWorld self-assessments are super good. So I did those 2 first, and then I did MBME practice exams. And you buy those from the MBME website. I did like 3 of them. I did MBME 29, 30, and 31, if anyone was curious. And I thought those were super representative of what the actual exam looks like. And then the last thing I did was the MBME Free 120. And if you go to the MBME website, or if you just type in MBME Free 120 on Google, it'll come up where it's just 120 questions that are the most similar to what you're going to see on test day. And this doesn't give you a score, but it gives you a percentage. And if you're scoring anywhere, I've heard like what the internet says, if you score like a 70% or higher on the Free 120, then you're in really good shape and you're ready to take this exam. So that was what I was doing. I was in dedicated. I was hammering my weak areas, like watching all those biochem, stats, and OMM videos, and doing those exams once a week, keeping up with my Anki every single day, and doing UWorld questions when I had the time. I took Step 1 on June 9th, and then COMLEX on June 13th. So you'll hear plenty of people say, well, at least I did, that like a week wasn't enough to cram all of your OMM. I got everything I needed for OMM in 3 days, and I thought it was plenty. Using those Dirty Medicine videos, like the Dirty Medicine playlist. I don't know, I'm not advising that you just cram it all, but if you have to, it worked for me. And I would advise like taking Step 1 first, just so you can save that time after Step 1 to continue reviewing, catch up on OMM with your Dirty Medicine videos and your TrueLearn questions, and then you're ready to go by the time you get to COMLEX. Like I said, I took mine like 4 days apart, and for me that was great. I really liked, gave myself a few days to do some OMM, continue reviewing, and then go get the exam over with, and I had the rest of the summer off, and it was great. I really enjoyed that. So that's really all I wanted to point out with just show you how to use this document, how important it is to use, and like how successful and useful of a tool it is for people that are getting ready for boards. And I'm really convinced that if you do school this way and you keep up with boards material this way, like, you're gonna pass your boards. And I wish there was someone to have told me that when I was in your position, because it's just like so much uncertainty. You never know if what you're doing is right. And keeping up this way, if you do all this, it forces you to stay ahead. It forces you to stay kept up. And it's a lot of review as you move on throughout OMS2. So it gets easier as you go on. It does get to be, I was doing like 3-4 hours of just Anki every single day before getting into any new material, like while I was in dedicated, just because I had so many cards unlocked. But like I said, I wouldn't change anything about it. This has been the most valuable resource for me and a lot of people in my class. And I have plenty of friends that, it's not to say that this is the only way to do it. There are several other ways to do it. I can't really speak on that because I just didn't experience it that way. But I do know that a few of my friends that did it a different way and did not keep up with this, when we were like a week out and dedicated, I had several people telling me that they wish they kept up on this and they felt like they'd be more confident going into the exam. So I would highly suggest it. And I really, if you keep up this way and you stay prepared way ahead of time, just like from day one, I know you guys are into your second year a little bit now, your whole board's experience will be easier in the sense that you'll have less to do for DMU. So I can't remember exactly when you take it. I think it was in like March or something, maybe April, where you take an exam called the COMAT FBS, which is like, I think it was like, I honestly can't remember how many questions it was, but it was basically just a practice COMLEX exam. And if you do really well on that COMAT FBS, you do not have to take an exam called the COMSE. And the COMSE, you guys will have to take in May, I believe, is an exam that tells DMU that you're ready to take COMLEX. So passing COMLEX is a 400, the score is a 400. DMU requires that you get a 450 on COMSE before they even let you sit for COMLEX. But if you keep up on this, do really well on COMAT FBS, you do not even have to take COMSE. Like I didn't take it at all. There's plenty of people that, and if you do well and decide you don't have to take COMSE, but you still want to, DMU will still pay for you to pay for the exam for you, and you can still take it at your leisure. You don't have to go to DMU and stuff like that. So if you want another practice exam, it's useful. And for the people that are considering, I'm a DO student, do I really need to take step one? I would really, really highly encourage you to take step one, just for the sense of residency placements later down the line. I'm not gonna lie, it's a harder exam. I figured, and a lot of people I talked to thought that step one was a harder exam. But there's so many residencies that screen people out based off of not having a step one. Or if you're applying somewhere and another DO student's applying somewhere and you have step one and they don't, that might be encouraging for the site to choose you as a better candidate. And also, if you study really hard for step one, COMLEX is, if you're confident for step one, you're going to be ready for COMLEX is basically what I'm getting at. And another thing I'd like to mention is please do not underestimate that this exam is pass-fail. I'm not trying, I know my class for some reason likes to scare all you guys, but it is tough. I went back home for research over the summer and I heard several professors at the med school in my hometown saying, well, why are you getting ready for STEP? It's pass-fail, you don't need to worry about anything. And I really don't want you to have that idea in your head. This exam is going to be very, very tough for you regardless of how you approach it. So I just don't want you to underestimate the thing. You have to get a 60% roughly on step one to pass. There's not really any data that I could find about COMLEX, but 60%, and I think it's 280 questions, and that can be pretty hard to get. So just study really hard and be prepared for this to be pretty tough for you, okay? And don't be surprised if you go into another thing I forgot to mention about UWorld earlier, is that UWorld is not necessarily representative of like how you're going to do on STEP. That was an answer that I never really had when I was studying for boards that I really wished that I did. So, I would go in sometimes and get a 40% on UWorld, or I would get an 80%, or, sometimes you do really well, sometimes you do very, very poorly. The best thing UWorld is a textbook in disguise, is the best way to look at it. It's just a tool that's there to show you what you do and do not know, and it's very useful at hammering out those weak areas and helping you learn. So don't be discouraged if you're doing poorly on UWorld, because it's really a hard resource to gather and to do well on. And just learn the best you can from it, and move on, and don't get that similar question wrong in the future, and that shows progression, and you'll be just fine. So in comparison of STEP to COMLEX, like I mentioned previously, I think STEP is definitely like a little bit more difficult in the sense of like the level of difficulty of their questions, but COMLEX can be pretty difficult to understand what they're asking at times. So they both have their pitfalls, but I remember COMLEX definitely had way more ethics on it, and like I mentioned, the questions can be a little bit more vague. Step one is the questions are more straightforward, but sometimes you just don't, it's just a difficult concept that they're testing you on. And something that is super, super important for everyone to know is that, so there's like 7 40-question blocks on step one, and I want you guys all to know that 10 to 13 of those questions per block are not real, and they count for nothing. They're experimental questions that the testers throw in there to see if people can get right. They're throwing them in there to trip you up, make you waste time, and miss points on the questions that count for something. So what I mean by they're not real is that if you get them right, it does nothing for you, and if you get them wrong, it does nothing against you. So when you're taking step one and you get 10 questions in a row, you're like, oh wow, I feel great about this, and then you get, for me, it was like 10, sometimes 15 in a row where I had no idea what they were talking about. Like, I would recognize the pathology, and then I just had no clue, draw a blank completely on what the question itself was asking, and they would just throw out some wild concepts. So you're going to run into these questions. Don't let them trip you up. Flag them and move on. Come back if you have time. But it's comforting to know if you take a block and you're like, man, I feel like I missed 20 questions on that. You can be like, well, maybe 15 of them weren't even real anyway. So it's okay to feel like you're missing a lot of questions, is basically what I'm getting at. And that is everything I have for you guys. So I would highly encourage, as I've mentioned several times, try to keep up with this the best that you can. Do your Anki every single day. So for me, I don't think I mentioned my schedule. I'd get up in the morning, do Anki for a couple hours, watch all my lectures, go watch all these videos, unlock all these cards, do all these cards, then go back through my lectures and add the extra cards that DMU, over material that DMU wants me to know that I couldn't find in these board resources. If you keep up with that, you will do great. You will pass your boards, and you'll also do really well at DMU. It starts to get to the point where you're like putting DMU material on the back burner so you can focus heavily on boards. And if you keep up with it this way, you'll be just fine. All right, guys. Well, that's everything I have. Thank you for watching, and I appreciate all of you for taking my advice as meaning anything or having any merit. I feel like my experience with boards is pretty similar to a lot of other students, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. You can just email me, like if you type in my name on Outlook, email me there, and I'll get back to you with any questions that you guys might have. All right, guys, you're all going to do great. Keep up the hard work and stay ahead of boards, and you're all going to be just fine. All right, good luck, guys.